A fashionably dressed woman is attacked in a Los Angeles ghetto. Her identity is shocking.
It's a whodunit, and you're really grasping for anything.
The case goes cold until a determined forensic investigator gets a risky idea: how to find a murderer.
You really only have one chance, one opportunity to make it work.
A dangerous lifestyle, a rare clue, and twisted motive. Can SID follow the dots to catch a killer? In Los Angeles, the streets of South Central are not paved with Hollywood dreams. And for some, it can be a dead end.
Just next to a large trash dumpster, it appeared to be a female laying on the ground.
Forensic experts from LAPD's Scientific Investigation Division examine the body, their first step in unraveling this mystery.
An obvious gunshot wound to the head. The victim was shot behind the left ear.
It appears the victim was shot at close range. And it looks as if she may have been sexually assaulted.
The dress was pulled up above the waist, and the panties were pulled down just above the knees.
Then, investigators discover her outfit is misleading.
The victim, in fact, was a man. He was approximately 6 foot and heavy-shouldered.
The victim has no ID, but investigators have no doubt that he was one of the many transvestite prostitutes that roam LA's streets.
It was something that they will do to either supply their drug habit or get their money to survive on.
These street hustlers are easy marks, often ending up beaten by angry pimps and johns.
People have been severely beaten and stabbed or shot. But it's the first time I've come across one where there's actually a murder involved.
But on these mean streets, investigators find no witnesses and no murder weapon, only limited ballistic evidence.
2 cartridge cases had been left behind during the shooting. 25 auto caliber cartridge cases.
We believed if we could find a gun to match those casings, that we can put a suspect to this murder.
When they moved the body, a new discovery, an ill-fated reminder of his life that could also lead to his killer.
Underneath the victim was found a condom.
There was no other condoms in the area. It was the only one was found. It was not something that had been there for any length of time.
A condom is a very good piece of information. Even though in the crime scene you had homeless people there all the time, so the condom could have basically came from anyone. But it was very smart to book that as evidence.
SID returns to the lab, hopeful that the ballistic evidence and the condom will help them figure out what happened.
The condom is in contact with the suspect and the victim. It's a source of potential DNA that we can get and connect the victim with the suspect.
At the autopsy, 2 slugs are removed from the victim's body for analysis. His fingerprints reveal a name, Daniel Williams, and a familiar story of someone living on LA's fringe.
Daniel Williams did have a rap sheet.
What did I do?
Watch your head.
It consisted of prostitution arrests. Nothing out of the ordinary that we didn't expect to probably find once he was identified.
Detectives theorize that the killer, not knowing these streets were hangouts for transvestite hustlers, made a terrible mistake.
He thought he was picking up a female.
When he realized that this person was a transvestite, he became irate and he shot the victim.
It's a hell of a way to die and a hell of a place to die.
To track Daniel's killer, investigators will need to explore LA's secret world of streetwalkers in drag.
In a situation like that, you're going to start with the victim. Try and backtrack on where they've been in the last 24 to 48 hours, who their friends are, who last saw them.
Investigators approach other drag hookers on the street.
There is a kinship because they try to look out for each other's back. They wanted to supply us with what information, not enough to get them in trouble.
Slowly, they begin to open up.
The people in the victim's life were saying that he had a boyfriend.
Investigators only have a single name, Ron, but it's a crucial break in a case that has few clues.
You don't have a lot to go on, but we follow every lead we can follow. We don't give up.
They also learn where the victim last lived, a transient hotel in a rundown stretch of Los Angeles.
We searched and processed his apartment for prints. There was nothing found.
Then detectives notice a couple of scrawled phone numbers. One connects to a rehab clinic.
He had both alcohol and drug problems at the time.
The other number leads them to Daniel's sister, Pauline, who still lives in Georgia. She tells detectives how her brother moved from the Deep South, hoping to find love and acceptance in freewheeling LA.
Whatever lifestyle my brother chose to live, he was unconditionally loved by his family.
The victim's sister said he was a very soft-spoken person that wouldn't get into confrontation or altercation.
Being a part of the South, his lifestyle was frowned upon. Him and others got treated pretty bad.
Hey, sis. How you doing?
So Danny felt like it was freedom in Los Angeles.
Lured by the promise of reinventing his life in Hollywood, Daniel only found himself trapped in prostitution and an abusive relationship.
We didn't know Ron, but from the way he described him and Ron would be in fights. It would be pretty ugly.
The more investigators learn about the two men's rocky relationship, the more they suspect Ron, the boyfriend.
Anytime when you're doing a murder investigation and you put on blinders and you only pursue that one avenue, then you're going to be in big trouble.
As investigators try to make sense of Daniel's fragmented life, SID finishes its analysis from the crime scene.
When we discovered, unfortunately, there was no sperm or semen.
We were disappointed because obviously if there was semen found in the condom, we would have a very good chance for DNA.
The condom evidence goes nowhere, and their only lead on a suspect is the victim's boyfriend, Ron.
It's a whodunit, and you're really grasping for anything.
Then, 2 days later, another shocking crime puts Daniel's murder in a whole new light.
Guys, we got something.
Another shooting of a similar MO had occurred elsewhere in the city of Los Angeles.
Detectives rush to the crime scene, just 2 miles from where Daniel was killed, to see if the cases are connected.
This would get us a little excited.
The similarities are too striking to ignore. The latest victim was also a transvestite prostitute, and he was shot with the same type of gun, a .25 caliber pistol.
A lot of the circumstances revolving around both victims are the same, and so obviously that was a very nice lead.
So we believe that if both ballistic rounds would match up, that we might be looking at the same murderer that had shot our victim.
2 transvestite prostitutes murdered in 2 days. Is this just coincidence? Or is there a cold-blooded killer on the dark streets of LA ready to kill again? A new murder, not far from where Daniel Williams was killed, puts SID on high alert. There could be more bodies to come. The firearms unit compares the shell casings from both crime scenes.
The bullet fragments were compared, examining the landing groove impressions and the microscopic tool marks engraved into the metal surface of the fired bullet.
Bullets that were recovered from both victims did not match, and the casings did not match.
We were able to determine that these were fired from different guns.
For investigators dead set on finding Daniel's killer, the dead end is frustrating.
It's difficult in this job when you hit the dead end.
When it doesn't pan out, there is emotional letdown.
We're back to square one.
Hey guys.
Detectives regroup and intensify their search for Daniel Williams's mysterious boyfriend, Ron. Inquiries at Williams's drug and alcohol rehab clinic begin to pay off.
A person with the rehabilitation center supplied us with information about Ron.
Ron had also attended the clinic, and a drug counselor tells how a devastating betrayal was tearing the two men apart.
Daniel was afraid of Ron because Ron was upset with Daniel during their relationship that Daniel, in fact, was HIV positive and did not inform Ron of that before they had unprotected sex.
Finally, a motive and a solid lead.
That's suspect number one in my book.
That much anger could be a motive for murder, but investigators need something tangible to confirm their suspicion. SID devises a complicated new test to analyze the condom again for possible DNA evidence that may have gone undetected.
Looking for sperm had not panned out. But after doing a microscopic examination, one of the criminalists found a few nucleated epithelial cells.
And those little cells might just catch a killer. Epithelial cells, or E cells, line the cavities of the body. If the killer was wearing this condom, SID serologists might be able to collect enough of these cells to extract a DNA sample.
The amount of cells on the inside of the condom was, I'd say, borderline, on the low side for a successful DNA typing. But that's really all we had, so that's what we pursued.
The E cells on the outside of the condom match the victim's DNA, suggesting sexual contact. But SID is able to extract E cells from the inside. It's those tiny calling cards that could lead to the killer.
An unknown male. And we knew that was very likely our suspect.
There was no other leads leading to anybody, and it was the only problem that Daniel had with anybody was with this boyfriend, Ron.
It's been 2 weeks since the murder, and investigators contact the rehab clinic once again. This time, the elusive Ron has been spotted there. Investigators finally track him down, and he's eager to talk.
Ron was cooperative.
Ron is visibly shaken to learn of his boyfriend's death. He readily admits they fought, but denies that it ever turned violent. He also has an airtight alibi, easily verified by detectives. He was out of town when Daniel was murdered.
He wasn't able to be at two places at the same time and commit this crime.
No leads. It was down to nothing.
For now, the tiny E-cell sample goes back into the freezer at SID. The investigation stalls.
When you have a limited sample size, you have to be very careful. You have to choose what type of analysis you do very judiciously.
Williams's family must now live with their unresolved frustration.
It seemed like nothing would ever become of Danny's case, and he would just be one dead person that was found with no end to it.
Usually, on most cold cases, that's how they remain. That's how they stay.
For the next 5 years, Daniel Williams's case goes unsolved. Then, a breakthrough. New forensic technology brings to life old evidence and points to a shocking suspect. The Daniel Williams murder case has been cold for 5 years. His family still fears his killer might have attacked others.
It's not so much as wanting that person to really suffer. I just didn't want anybody else to be hurt or taken away from their family.
But while the case hasn't changed, the technology has. The FBI now has a computerized database with millions of DNA profiles, one of which might be Williams's killer.
In a case like this, where there is a possibility of some type of DNA evidence, we have a cold case team that reviews and reopened by them.
Investigators now want to take DNA from the E-cells and run it through the DNA database. But it's still risky. If Daniel's killer isn't a convicted felon, he won't show up in the computer.
The sample will be consumed in only one analysis, and you really only have one chance, one opportunity to make it work.
But if the test can solve a 5-year-old murder, it's a risk worth taking. It takes several days to process the sample. If there's no match, the best piece of evidence will be gone, and with it, the entire investigation.
The profile of the unknown male from the condom was uploaded to the database.
After a week of anxious waiting, investigators now have a possible killer.
There, in fact, was what we call a cold hit on a parolee that had given a sample while he was in prison.
We got one.
Go.
His name is Aaron John Richardson, an ex-con with a record that includes assault and robbery. And the most crucial part, he was paroled just a few weeks before the murder.
His name was never mentioned in any of the reports, any of the investigators' notes or anywhere. Until the DNA, we had no idea who he was.
But now they do.
This is probably the biggest high you're going to get on a cold case.
It is gratifying when something that we try works, and it works even when, say, the odds were against us.
Richardson's history of violence makes him a likely suspect. But his DNA match only proves he had sex with Williams, not that he killed him.
You're gonna need a confession from the suspect.
Detectives locate him with the help of his parole officer and bring him in for questioning. But Richardson denies everything.
It's hard to remember things back.
He wasn't there, didn't do it. They had nothing to do with anything.
Investigators believe they are looking into the face of a killer. What they don't know is the shocking motive behind his cold-blooded crime. DNA evidence alone is not enough to convict Aaron John Richardson. But if investigators can convince him it is enough, they might get him to break.
After the interview was going for a while, we explained to him that we did find a condom at the scene with his DNA.
By this time, most people have seen the crime scene shows and what DNA evidence can prove.
And once we explained that to him, his whole demeanor changed.
Having played bad cop with the evidence, detectives now play good cop by pretending to be his pal.
We told him nobody really cared about the victim because of his lifestyle. What we needed to get to was the truth. He told us that, yeah, okay, I'm gonna tell you the truth.
It's kind of foggy. This is a long time ago.
The victim and the suspect were engaged in a sexual act outside a vehicle.
The comment to where I'm not a woman. You know, you understand what I'm saying?
During the time that they were having sex, he discovered that the victim was in fact a male and not a female.
You're mad, you're upset because you realize, hey, this is a man.
He became so enraged that he pulled out a .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol.
You just lose it, man. You just lose it.
And he shot the victim in the head.
How many times did you fire that gun? Twice. Might have been twice.
He seemed very relieved to finally get it off his chest, like he'd been carrying it around for some time.
When Richardson is arrested and brought to trial, he confesses to killing Daniel Williams, but swears he didn't mean to. He is found guilty of voluntary manslaughter and faces 11 years in prison.
When technology caught up with the investigation, it in fact solved the case for us.
This was a great case for SID because the traditional investigative techniques detectives use had been exhausted, and we really had to go with forensic evidence.
The science of DNA solved his case, and I'm truly grateful.